Hi, everyone. I'm so excited. I get to bring you the elementary lesson for this week. We are going to talk about Gideon. So first, if you haven't done the Lifeway lesson, pause before you listen to me. You can go and click on the link below me and watch the Bible story video, print off the activity page and the family conversation guide that you guys can go through together as a family throughout the week. And then come up and listen to me so we can talk about what we just learned. So I'm going to pause while you do that. Okay, now that you're back, we can start our talk about Gideon. So we this week get to jump back into the Old Testament and learn and read in the book of Judges and learn about Gideon. So the past couple of weeks, we learned about how we can worship God, and we worship God by praying, reading our Bible and singing and worshiping Him with our voices. And now we get to do a new unit about choices and how we get to choose to obey God. And Gideon is a great example in the Bible about someone who chose to obey God. So I'm going to share my screen and we can go over the Bible story. Let's see here. Here we are. So here is Gideon, and his story is in the book of Judges. And we first, it's in a time of history where the Israelites had turned away from God. And so for the past 7 years, the Midianites, which is another group of people, ruled over God's people, the Israelites. The Midianites attacked the Israelites and destroyed their crops. And in order to stay safe, the Israelites had to hide in the mountains. And so God came and called on Gideon to help rescue the Israelites. And so here's one day while Gideon was doing his normal job of threshing wheat, an angel appeared before him and said, "The Lord is with you. You are a mighty warrior. You will save your people from the Midianites." And Gideon was like, "Hold up, me? Wait, are you talking to me? Not me. My family is poor. We're not a family known for anything. And even that, I'm the youngest of all my brothers. I'm going to save them? I mean, I got all these older people you could ask." And God said, "No, I am asking you, and I'm going to equip you, and I will be with you throughout the whole process." And so here Gideon had a choice. He had a choice of what he was going to do. Was he going to obey God and follow what he was saying, or is he going to be like, "No, I'm good. I'm going to stay here in my safe mountain hiding spot, and it's all going to work itself out." And so he at first wasn't quite sure what to do. And so he went to God. And that's such a great example for us on when we're kind of unsure of what to do. We need to always turn back to God, and we can stop and pray about our choices. We can go to the Bible and God's word. And so here in Judges 6, we see how Gideon, I have my Bible right here, so I'm going to read to you from Judges 6, how Gideon turned to God to ask for some reassurance on what choice he should make. So Gideon said to God, "You promised me you would use me to save Israel. Please do something for me. I'll put a piece of wool on the threshing floor. Suppose dew is only on the wool tomorrow morning, and suppose the ground all around it is dry. Then I will know that you will use me to save Israel. I'll know that your promise will come true." And so Gideon was looking to God for a little reassurance, and he knows that what God promises will always come true, and that is true for us too. And so that's exactly what happened. Gideon got up early the next day. He squeezed the dew out of the wool, and the water filled the bowl, and the ground surrounding it was dry. And so here is where Gideon has a choice. Is he gonna, now he's had some reassurance, and now what's he gonna do? Is he gonna choose to obey God? And he does. At each step along this process, he now has chosen to obey God with his whole heart. And so what a great example about how again and again and again you have to choose to obey God. And so Gideon started to gather an army of people, and he got as many people as he could find, because the Midianites were strong and they were large and they had all these supplies. And so he gathered all of the people he could to get a good army that he could go and lead against the Midianites. And so he gathered 32,000 men, and he was like, okay, we're feeling pretty good. Our numbers are still a little small, but we think we can do it, and the Lord is with us. And so it's looking like it's going to stack up okay. And God didn't want there to be any confusion on who was saving them and whose power it was coming from. And so sometimes you can get confused on if whose power it comes from. And God wanted to make this crystal clear that God was the one who was saving the Israelites. So he went, the Lord, I'm going to read to you now from Judges 7, and about what the Lord instructs Gideon to do next. So the Lord said to Gideon, I want to hand Midian over to you, but you have too many men for me to do that. Then Israel might brag, my own strength has saved me. So here is what I want you to announce to the army. Tell them, those who tremble with fear can turn back. They can leave. So 22,000 men left. And that left Gideon with 10,000 men. I'm sure he was like, I needed all those men. It wasn't looking super sure with all those men. And now I have 10,000. And how much more faith and trust did he need to put in God to continue to obey him? And yet again, he chooses to obey God. Even when the numbers are stacked up against him and he's like, I don't know if this is going to work out, and I definitely can't do it on my own with 10,000 men, he continues to choose to trust and obey God. And so God, again, doesn't want there to be any confusion, so he takes it a step further. And he does another thing that it's kind of a silly way to differentiate between the men. And so he tells Gideon, still here in chapter 7, there are still too many men, so take them down to the water, and there I will reduce the number of them for you. If I say, this one will go with you, he will go. So Gideon took the men down to the water. There the Lord said to them, so some men will drink the way dogs do, and they will lap up the water with their tongues, separate from those who get down on their knees to drink. And so 300 men brought the water up to their mouths with their hands and lapped it up the way dogs do, and all the rest got down on their knees to drink. So the Lord spoke to Gideon. He said, with the help of 300 men who lapped up the water, I will save you. I will hand the Midianites over to you. And so he had to tell all the other men who drank the water by kneeling down to go home. And so that left him with 300 men. And so again, here's a time where Gideon has to continue to choose to trust and obey God with his whole heart, when now the numbers don't make sense in any way. You only have 300 men. There's no way that you can do this on your own. Only God can defeat this army now. And so again, God wants to take it to the very end, so there is absolutely no question who is protecting these Israelites and defeating this army. And so God tells Gideon to do one more thing. And so typically when you go to war, you would, use weapons. And so, but not here. He tells Gideon to take trumpets and pitchers. So if it's now taking it to the most absurd level, you don't even get weapons. So God helped Gideon know what to do. God told Gideon to give every man a trumpet and an empty pitcher with a torch inside. So Gideon directed the men to surround the enemy camp, and at his sound, he blew his trumpet, and all the men broke the pitchers, blew their trumpets, and shouted for the Lord and for Gideon. And the Lord did what he promised he would do. He protected the Israelites. The Midianites were terrified when this happened. God confused them, and they turned and began to fight one another and run away. And there the battle was won. And Gideon and the Israelites won and defeated this huge army with only 300 men and trumpets. And so God did what he promised to do. And it shows how Gideon continued to trust and obey God throughout the whole process. And so we can take this example right into our very own lives. And so God continues to want us, just like Gideon, to honor him and trust him and obey him. And so we can continue to choose to do what is right. It's not something that just happens and we don't really have to think about it, or it's just naturally going to work itself out. Like, we have to every day decide and choose through every situation that we are going to obey God and do what is right. Well, I have some examples of some choices and some Bible verses that we can turn to. If sometimes we're not sure, then we can turn to the Bible for reassurance, just like Gideon. And the Bible is full of God's true words and God's words of how we can obey him. And so we have this first example. Your best friend decides he wants to sit with a different group of kids at lunch. He invited all of them to his birthday party, but he did not invite you. What should you do? So we can turn to Proverbs 17:17 as an example. And it says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born to help in time of need. So we can continue to love on this friend. Even as he hurts your feelings, you can continue to love on him and share God's love as you go through this process with him. Next example, your mom told you to empty the dishwasher before you could play video games, but you know she won't be home for another hour. What should you do? So here you have a choice. What should you do? We can turn to Ephesians 6:1 in the Bible. And it says, children, obey your parents because you belong to the Lord, for this is the right thing to do. So you need to empty that dishwasher before you play your video games. So we need to obey your parents. Okay. Your sister spilled chocolate milk on the couch. Oh, that's a mess. What should you do? Philippians 2:4 can give us the right choice we can make. Let's take a look. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too. So you can help your sister clean up that spilled milk. I know you didn't do it, but you can choose to be kind and helpful and loving and help her clean up that huge mess. Okay, last one. Your grandpa is in the hospital and is bored and lonely. What should you do? Let's see, Ephesians 4:32. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. So while he's there, bored and lonely, we need to share God's love with him and be kind and tender-hearted. So you could do things like call him on the phone and draw him a nice picture, or send him a note in the mail or a card to help encourage him during that time in the hospital. So this takes us right to our verse for the week, which is just a perfect verse for this lesson because it points out exactly what Gideon has done in our story. And so the verse is, help me understand your instruction and I will obey it and follow it with all of my heart. Psalm 119:34. So Gideon, he first needed to understand God's instructions. And so he asked for some reassurance that he was understanding him correctly. And then once he was reassured, he obeyed and followed with all of his heart, continuing again and again and again. As he went from 32,000 men to 22,000 men, or 10,000 men to 300 men. He continued to obey and follow God. So this is our verse this week, and lets us help us. You can post it up in your room or in your kitchen or on your bathroom mirror. And so every morning, this would be a great reminder to you that you are going to continue to choose to obey and follow God. So let's read it again. Help me understand your instruction, and I will obey it and follow it with all of my heart. Psalm 119:34. Okay, so let me stop sharing. That's our last slide. So I'm so glad we got to talk about Gideon today, and we learned how he continued to choose to obey, trust, and follow God. And so we can use that as such a great example for us that we, as we go through our everyday life, can continue to choose to obey God, continue to choose to share God's love, to continue to choose to be kind and loving to our family members, to our neighbors, to our friends, and to the people we see every day. So as I challenge you this week, to continue to think about our weekly verse, and continue to, in the morning, you can get up and you can pray and ask God to help you continue to choose to obey him, and show kindness and love as you go throughout your day. So I hope you guys have a fabulous week. Thanks for listening to me, and I can't wait to see you next week with our next lesson. Bye.